small village of Umuoke, nestled between the green hills of eastern Nigeria, there lived two young women, Adanna and Chioma. Their friendship was the talk of the village. They had grown up together, shared dreams and secrets, and were inseparable. If you saw Adanna, Chioma was not far behind. They were like two halves of a whole. Adanna was the kind of person who lights up a room just by walking into it. She was beautiful, with a smile that could melt the hardest of hearts. But more than her looks, it was her kindness that drew people to her. Everyone in Umuoke knew she was the girl with a heart of gold. She had dreams of leaving the village one day, of going to the big city, Lagos, to make a name for herself. And Chioma, her best friend, was always by her side, encouraging her, or so it seems. Chioma was different from Adanna. Where Adanna was warm and open, Chioma was reserved and calculating. She often felt like she lived in Adanna's shadow, and this feeling festered inside her, slowly turning into jealousy. As Adanna's popularity grew, so did Chioma's envy. She couldn't understand why people adored Adanna so much and overlooked her. This jealousy, which she kept hidden, began to consume her. One evening, the village was abuzz with excitement. A big party was being held to celebrate the successful harvest season. Everyone was invited, and Adanna and Chioma were no exception. Adanna, always the life of the party, was excited, while Chioma silently brooded, her mind racing with dark thoughts. As they arrived at the party, the music was loud, and the smell of roasted meat filled the air. Adanna greeted everyone with her usual warmth, but Chioma's smile was forced. She had a plan that night, one she has been contemplating for weeks. In her twisted mind, she believed that if Adanna were out of the way, she could finally have the life she deserved. The party was in full swing when Chioma saw her opportunity. Adanna had left her drink on a table while she danced with some of the other villagers. Chioma quickly glanced around, making sure no one was watching. Then she reached into her bag to pull out a small vial. Her hand shook as she uncorked it, but she was determined. She poured the contents into Adanna's drink, her heart pounding in her chest. She quickly put the vial away and stepped back, blending into the crowd. But what Chioma didn't notice was that someone had been watching her. A stranger, a young man named Obinna, had been observing her movements closely. He had arrived in Umuoke only recently and didn't know many people, but he had noticed the strange look in Chioma's eyes. Something about the way she hovered near Adanna's drink had made him suspicious. As Adanna returned to her seat, laughing and breathless from dancing, Obinna made his move. He approached her, his heart racing, and quickly knocked the drink from her hand. The glass shattered on the ground, and Adanna looked up at him in shock, her laughter dying in her throat. "What are you doing?" she demanded, her eyes wide with surprise. Obinna didn't answer immediately. He glanced around and saw Chioma's face, pale and stricken. "You can't drink that," he finally said, his voice low and urgent. "I saw her. I saw Chioma put something in it." Adanna's heart skipped a beat. She turned to look at Chioma, her best friend, the one person she trusted more than anyone else in the world. But instead of the usual warmth, all she saw was guilt and fear in Chioma's eyes. Chioma tried to deny it, to laugh it off, but the truth was there for all to see. The party came to a sudden halt as people gathered around, whispering and pointing. The realization that her best friend had tried to kill her was too much for Adanna to bear. Tears welled up in her eyes as the weight of betrayal crushed her. She didn't wait for an explanation. She couldn't. Without a word, she turned and ran, her vision blurred with tears. The party, the music, the laughter, everything faded away as she fled into the night. Obinna followed her, but he kept his distance, giving her space to process what has just happened. Adanna ran until she reached the edge of the village, where she collapsed on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. How could Chioma, her best friend, betray her like this? What had she done to deserve such hatred? Eventually, Obinna approached her cautiously. "Adanna," he said softly, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you, but you needed to know the truth." Adanna looked up at him, her eyes red and swollen. Why? Why would she do this to me? Obinna shook his head. Jealousy is a dangerous thing. It can make people do terrible things. For a long time, they sat in silence, the weight of what had happened hanging heavily between them. Adanna knew one thing for certain. She could never go back to the way things were. Chioma had shattered her trust, and she didn't think she could ever trust anyone like that again. As dawn began to break over the horizon, Adanna wiped her tears and stood up. She turned to Obinna, who had stayed by her side all night. "Thank you," she said, her voice steady but filled with pain. "You saved my life." Obinna nodded, but he could see the pain in her eyes. "What will you do now?" Adanna looked out at the rising sun. The new day, a painful reminder that life had to go on. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I do know one thing. I can never go back to trusting people the way I used to. Not after this." Obinna placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "You are strong, Adanna. You will get through this. And remember, not everyone is like Chioma. There are still good people out there." Adanna wanted to believe him, but the wound was too fresh, too raw. She had lost more than just a friend that night. She had lost a part of herself, the part that believed in the goodness of others. As the first ray of sun touched the village, Adanna made a vow to herself. She would move forward, but she would do so with caution. She would never allow herself to be vulnerable again. Trust was a luxury she could no longer afford. The world had shown her its dark side, and she would never forget the lesson. The moral of this story: jealousy and envy can destroy even the closest of bonds, turning friends into enemies. Trust, once broken, is difficult to repair. It is important to choose our friends wisely and be cautious with whom we place our trust. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like, share, comment, and press the notification bell for more interesting and captivating stories. See you in the next story. Bye for now.